good evening. Welcome to the Passionate Professional. My name is Tunde Kukoyi, and I'm tonight. So the Passionate Professional series is an offshoot of the Passion and Purpose Hub, which is a channel that shares useful knowledge to maximize your passions and your purpose, so you can enjoy not just success but also fulfillment in your personal and your professional lives. Now, the reason the Passionate Professional series has been set up is to show you or bring closer to you professionals from all walks of life, you name it, finance, business, healthcare, arts, media, entertainment, and to bring them closer to you so they're not just people you're looking from afar or for people that you can actually see questions when they have the opportunity to, is to see that people are not just defining themselves by their titles, but they are going out there and making their own positive and their significant contributions to the world. And just the way a candle lights another candle, it is hope that through this episode you can actually see that if this person can do it, then I can do it as well. And you can just catch fire, or that flame can be lit up within you, and you can also go out there and make a positive and impactful contribution to your world. Thankfully, our host for today's episode is already here and is ready to answer us. But just before I bring him up, as I always ask a question to start with. And the question I'm going to ask you today is this: when was the last time that you learned something new? When was the last time you learned something new? Or what is your attitude to learning? Now, for many of us as professionals, regardless of what field we work in, we get to a certain stage where we feel like we've mastered our art or our craft or our careers or our jobs. And at that point, we tend to just become idle and just want to go and rest on our laurels. Very dangerous thing to do. The reason it's dangerous is because at that point, you just let your mind run on idle mode. And even though you might be getting promotions at work, you yourself know deep inside that you're not growing. It's just one or two things. Like someone once said, you're either growing or you're dying. And when we stop growing, then that means that some part of us is actually dying. So it's a very dangerous thing to do. So I would like us to very, very positive attitude to learning. And how can you become a continuous learner? You can become a continuous learner by reading books or listening to audiobooks, going outside your circle, your usual network, or your usual work clique, and go outside and learn something new, or maybe learn a new language, start a new course, watch programs like this. That's how you can become a continuous learner. And continuous learning is good because it gives you fresh perspectives. It makes you smart. It makes you ever vibrant. So people always want to hear from you because they know that you have a fresh insight to have to things. So if you've not learned something new in a while, I would encourage you that you should learning something new today. Develop a beginner's mindset and make sure that you keep on learning something new because it also helps, and it also helps to reduce things like neurodegenerative problems like Alzheimer's, dementia. It has been proven that if you want to in that such neurodegenerative disorders. So I'm just going to go into the introduction of our I think it's the first time that we're having a guest from the fashion and beauty industry, if I can call it that way. So I'm just going to bring up his bio and introduce him to us. If my computer is going to let me. Okay. So our guest for today is Mark McIver. Mark McIver, also known as SliderCuts, has been cutting hair professionally since 2003. So it's nearly 20 years now. I would say 20 years, depending on what month it started. It states that the very foundation in which SliderCuts has been created is a reflection of his Christian faith. And since opening the doors, he has nurtured an impressive client list, which includes basketball player Lebron James, world heavyweight champion boxer Anthony Joshua, TV personality Reggie Yates, and high-hitting rappers Stormzy and Tiny Temper, amongst others. He now has over 184,000 followers on Instagram and 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. Slider Cuts has traveled the globe cutting hair, making him a worldwide renowned barber. His razor sharp skills make him an expert figure in his field, and his vast knowledge and business acumen has made him a trusted figure within the wider community. And as a result, he was recognized for his position as one of the UK's top black business people following his win at the acclaimed Black British Business Awards in 2018, and he was nominated for a prestigious Evening Standard Business Award in 2019. He has also built up a highly recognizable brand in Slider Cuts that has stretched his reach and impact far beyond the barbering industry. landing him features in Nike's Nothing Beats a Londoner campaign, Facebook's Let's Get to Work campaign, features in magazines such as GQ and Time Out, to name a few. And not only that, Mark opened the SliderCuts studio barbershop in East London in 2018 and is working on creating a product line and released his debut book in 2019 titled Shaping Up Culture, where he shares key business insights. Mark's passion, drive, and diligence has allowed him to not only build a successful business, but to also become a role model to many. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome to the virtual stage Mark Maciver. Hi,
Hello.
Mark.
Hey, how
How
you
are you
doing?
today? Good, good, good. Thank you, first of all, for honoring this invitation. I know from experience as an African man that Sunday evenings are like peak periods for for men to want to cut their hairs because they want to enter into the week looking all fresh and nicely groomed. So thank you for taking out 1 hour of your precious time to come on the Passionate Professional and educate myself as well as the other people that will be watching this show. Thank you, Mark.
No problem at all. No problem.
Well, that's such an impressive bio that you have there. I mean, it's really great, and it's actually heartwarming to see the good things that you're doing, how you're having influence not just in your sphere but outside of your sphere as well. So a lot of people are actually waiting to hear from you, learn from your experiences, and there are people that watch this even afterwards as a replay. So thank you once again, and we hope to learn from you today. But just as I'd like to start, I know that a bio is like the form of a formal introduction. But usually, when if I caught you somewhere else, it probably would not be your bio. You tell me about you. You tell me where you're from and things like that. So I'm really curious to know where you're from. Your name is not a conventional name, just to get a bit more context into your background. So tell us more about yourself, Mark.
Okay, so my name is Mark Maciver. Um, I was born in England, but my heritage, my mother and my father are both Nigerian. People are always confused by the name Maciver. If you're
Yeah.
Nigerian, why is your name Maciver? Where did that come from? But that's because my great granddad was adopted by a Scottish man in
Hmm.
Nigeria. So
Okay.
we adopted the name Maciver. Our original surname would have been Elabi,
Hmm.
but through adoption, um, the surname changed, and that's where Maciver came from. I've been cutting hair, as you guys heard, for like professionally anyway, in a shop for
Yes.
20 years. Actually, 20 years, no, it's bang on 20 years. 20 years ago, January, I'm not sure what date, but at some point in
Wow.
January is when I started working in a barber shop. So it's 20 years right now. I do various things. I've written a book called
Yeah.
Shaping Up Culture, which is out now. It's in Amazon. It's on my website. I do public speaking. I run a hair studio. I've got about 11 stylists, barbers, about 25 people who work, I guess, under me, including back end staff and runners and, just back end stuff, admin, and just different things along the way. Yeah, I guess you said everything in the bio. I've been nominated for different awards. I've won some awards, lost some awards. I'm all over different platforms like YouTube. That needs to be updated because I think now I'm on 31 plus subscribers on YouTube and a few more on Instagram than what you mentioned. I'm on every platform though. LinkedIn, you know, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. You know, Twitter, as I said, TikTok, everything. I really try and be everywhere. Where everybody is where I try and be. I teach people how to cut hair. I teach people how to grow their businesses, especially small businesses, and that's me, kind of like in a nutshell.
Wow.
I'm a
Thank you.
family
Thank you
man as
so
well.
much.
I'm a family
Say
man
that
as
again,
well.
sir.
I'm
You're
a
a family
family.
man as well.
I have a wife, 2 children. I have a child on the way, which will be here in about 5-6 weeks.
Congratulations.
So you cut into my dinner. So I didn't, I've just me and my wife, mainly me, I just prepared dinner, and then it was ready, and then it's like, I need to go to the podcast. So they're
Oh,
eating right now. They're in the kitchen right now eating while I'm talking to you.
so what did you make for dinner?
What did I make?
Yeah.
It was a type of baked chicken.
Okay.
potatoes, butternut squash, carrots, broccoli, and that was it actually. So just loads of
Mm.
veg, chicken, and potatoes.
What's your favorite Nigerian food?
It'll probably be pounded yam. No, one of my favorites anyway. Pounded yam with either F4
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know many people do this right. So this is a mix I like to do because I
Yeah.
really like F4 and I really like obolo.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to mix them.
Okay.
It's not a mix a lot of people. It's not a mix
That's
a
an
lot.
interesting combination.
You should try it because obolo's got that kind of like salty, kind of sweet kind of taste, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It can be spicy. You mix that with F4, but F4 which hasn't had put F4 that hasn't got stew in it. So mix just the leaf basically before they put stew
Yeah.
in it. Just the
Mm-hmm.
leaf, mix it together. It's a great combination.
I think I'll try that one day. I'll get
Without,
back to you on how it tastes.
yeah, without the stew though. Don't put the stew into it.
No, no,
Just,
not no
just the
stew.
leaf.
Wow. Thanks, Mark. And thank you for the introduction. I think now more people know Mark, even deep on a deeper level. So the next question I'm going to ask you is, I know that you're ultimately passionate about your job, what you do, but are there some other things that you're also passionate about that you want to share with us?
Um, I'm passionate about helping where I can.
Mm,
I'm passionate about not being quote unquote successful, because successful can be anything, to be honest. I'm passionate about where I see a struggle, trying to play a part in alleviating that. And that plays out in different elements. And because it's just help, it could be helping someone with food today. It could
mhm,
be helping someone with writing, because or it could be helping someone young who's struggling with work and putting them in, with someone who can help them, study. It could be giving someone money to, pay their rent. It could be teaching someone how to cut hair, giving someone a career, like whatever. It could be anything in a sense, because it's just about, helping where I can help.
yeah.
And that's why I give out, to be honest, so much free information online, which people always question, like, why do you give us all of this information for free? Why don't you charge for it? And I don't
Mm.
know, it's just been like, why not?
Yeah, I think I once read one of your interviews, and you actually mentioned that if everyone in the world decided to help someone else, then the world would be a better place. And
Yeah,
yeah, I agree with you, definitely 100%. Like if we all decided to play our own part in making the world a better place, then ultimately the world will be a better place. Instead of asking like, what else, or why is this man not, why is this president not doing this? You start with yourself, like what can
yeah,
I contribute to the world? I think that's the best place to start from. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's really something very important. You're passionate about helping in whatever way you can. And I'm sure a lot of people would be able to attest to that, that you've helped them at some point in their lives, and that is why they will also be willing to help you at some point in your life. Anytime I'm sure you have what I think you call this social credit in your book.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and it's a way of building up social credit. Although that's not the reason you're doing it, but if it's just how life works. If you help people, then definitely help will come back to you.
yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Do you want to share some of your values as well with us? Because it kind of like ties with this. What are some of your values, or your non-negotiables, things that are very important to you?
Well, I'm a Christian, as you said in the bio.
Yeah.
So my values like stem from there. So I can't act like, I've created these values or made up these values.
Mm-hmm.
That is the backbone. That is kind of like, not even kind of like, that is, the backbone of the way I see life, the way I live out life, how I run my business, you know, the way I am, you could say, with my wife, my children to some degree. Not a perfect man in the slightest, but the way I see things, the way I see things should be happening, you know, that is all comes from there. So even when it comes to, or wanting to help people, or wanting to run business in a certain way. Is that, many people ask me all the time. They say, how have you created this business? And, how have you made it successful? And the reality is, some people don't want to hear it. Some people want to hear other things, right? And I do give them the breakdown, but the reality is, my business is built on biblical principles.
Mm.
I cannot just lie to act like it's not. It is, when people talk about integrity, my integrity comes from knowing that I answer to someone higher than the person in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So when little things like, as example, there's a chapter in my book called "You're Always in an Interview," and the whole idea of that is, if anybody can see you without knowing it, they are interviewing you. So no one sees a random person on the street and says, "I'm interviewing this person right now," but you see a random person on the street and you start observing their behavior subconsciously. If they're having an argument, you're watching the argument. You don't know who the two people are, but you're just thinking, okay, those guys are having an argument. If they're fighting, they're fighting. If someone falls over and you see someone in front of you, pick up the person, you acknowledge it. If someone is about to get on a bus and they step off and say, actually, you go first, as example, let's say ladies first, as example, you see that. If they say, oh, there's an older person that needs help on the bus, let me pick up this thing. You don't know who the person is, but you're observing it. Now, if you interact with that person later on in life, whether that is tomorrow, next week, a year's time, and they remember you, they now have pre-interviewed you because they saw what you've done, whether you were doing something good or doing something bad. And now they have a view of you. Why I tell people you're always in an interview. So if you were doing something wrong, like you were fighting, and you suddenly this person's interviewing you for a job, now in their head they're thinking, so you're a violent person. Even if you were in the right for that violence, even if it was, they didn't see what happened before, they didn't see what the other person done, but nevertheless, what they saw of you, they're like, this person's a violent person. I don't know if I want to work with this person. Or the other side, they saw you let the person on the bus first. They saw you help the person up who was tripping up someone. They saw you helping the older person who needed help with the heavy bag. And now in their head, it's kind of like a helpful person. So even though at the time they weren't directly interviewing you for anything, when you interact with that person again later on in life, they remember what they saw of you initially, as to why I always say you're always in an interview. But where does this even integrity come from? Where in my business, I've been fortunate about that. It becomes because I always see that I answer to someone higher than the person in front of me. So when I'm cutting your hair in a chair and I'm like, I'm tired, I can't be bothered, I just want to cut corners, I just want to leave this thing right now and maybe just get the next customer in. What does my conscience say? Right, God is almost like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. So I'm answering to someone bigger than the person in my chair. And this is where the integrity comes from as well, knowing that it's not only about doing the right things when the right person is around. Technically, because of my faith and my belief, the right person is always around, being God, who's the person who I answer to. So I need to also, be integral and make sure I do things correctly in the way I'm supposed to do them. But then what's happened in my life? I'm the one who's benefited from those things there. Because when you're dealing with people correctly and, giving a good service to everybody, because of that conviction I have about, almost serving God correctly and reflecting him correctly, now when I've served you, I don't know who you are, but when I've given you a good service and you come back to me 2 years later with an opportunity that came because I dealt with you correctly, even though at the time you were just, I didn't know there was any opportunities coming from it. You were just the person. So, when it talks about my business and my life and the integrity and all those things there, that's where it comes from, because ultimately most of us have integrity to some degree. It's a spectrum, right? If people are watching us, we do the right things. When people are not watching us, well, a lot of us anyway, a lot of times we do the right things. If people are not watching us, or we think people are not watching us, that's when we start letting things slide. And that's why I say in the book, but imagine being in a place where you knew you were always being watched. How would you then act? And most likely, especially in work, as example, you would probably end up getting the best out of yourself. Because when your boss is around, they get the best work out of you. When your boss isn't there, you start slacking. So ultimately, that means that when you are self-employed, especially, knowing that you are being watched will get the best out of yourself, and you're the one who benefits from it.
Yeah, I think when I read that part in your book as well, you struck a chord with me when you're like, you're always obviously both of us are on a live interview and people are seeing us, but it's just something really remarkable that everyone in the audience as well needs to know this, that you might not be the one on the screen right now, but you're also in an interview as well. Like people are watching you, your children are watching you, your partner is watching you, your colleagues are watching you, whether you know it or not. And even when they are not watching you, who are you when people are not watching as well? And yeah, integrity, just like you said, is one of your values. So thank you for sharing that with us. Moving on to some of your biggest achievements, some of your proudest achievements. Can you tell us? I mean, over your the span of your career, um, what are some of the achievements that have been most dear to your heart? Maybe not the biggest in terms of financial reward, but that you hold close to your heart.
Okay, business wise, so not like my personal life or family life. Business wise, my biggest achievement, a few things I would say is one, winning the Black British Business Award. That was a big one because I was up against, I'm a barber essentially, although I know I'm a bit more than that, but I'm a barber essentially, right? So
Yeah.
being in a place where I was up against people that were running businesses and big businesses, right? To win that was like, whoa, what is this? How have I won an award? People were winning like companies that are making millions and tens of millions and maybe hundreds of millions, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. So that was a really that was like a massive achievement in my life, and I guess also even at the time I think the other issue thing was I didn't even realize how big it was. I have this thing where a lot of times I don't realize how big things are until they pass. Because then that next day it's kind of like you're in the newspaper and they're talking about your award, and it's like, oh, wow. And then you just don't realize it. So that was massive. The other thing which I'd say would be, well, let's say the other two things. There's quite a few things, but the other two things I'd say would be being nominated for the Evening Standard Business Award.
Yeah.
And the reason why that was massive for me, even though I didn't win, was because this is no shade on black awards, but now being in a field where this award was open to everyone, so now it's not being narrowed down. There's no one limited from this. Everybody who's a human, can be nominated for this award. So first of all, for me to get nominated for that, I was like, whoa, the Evening Standard Business Award. I've been nominated for this, right? And then I'm at the award, and I'm like, there's the guy who owns Tottenham, as example, and I'm on a table with a person who owns Greg's. And then the person next to me who I'm speaking to, I can't remember the hotel, but it's a massive hotel in London. They got about 4 or 5 branches. They might have more now. And I'm next to him, and I'm just talking to him, right? And I'm looking at his table saying, look what I'm around. And I'm talking to the guy, and I'm just like, he's like, what do you do? And I'm like, you know what? I don't do anything like what you guys do. And he's like, well, you must be doing something big because, you're here. And then, you building some connections with these type of people, right? And it's like, how did I didn't win the award, right? But I'm like, I'm there in the room with people that own companies that are worth billions. How has this, guy that, started off cutting hair in his mum's house, in his room, suddenly here, and as a barber, and also I'm being recognized. I know I'm being recognized as kind of like somewhat, my business speaking, but as a barber, I'm being recognized as well. So that was a massive thing. And I think opening up my shop in 2018, SliderCuts Studios was massive as well for me. And and there'll be other things as well in the business, just like hiring staff, having it full up, having like 25 kind of staff members, which is just massive, and it is headache to manage that many people to some degree. But those are massive achievements because one of the things, and that is, so opening up my shop was one of the massive achievements. But one of the biggest achievements in opening up my shop has been being able to hire staff and help people fund their lives, whether that's get a mortgage, get married, put food on the table, pay for the rent, put clothes on your back, your children's back, and so on. Whatever it is, having a business that helps people do those things there is one of my massive achievements because that is one of my goals, you know, through business,
Mm-hmm.
not only about me, I can make this much money. It's actually, I can help you make money to live your life and do the things that, you know, will help your life. And that's why that's one of my massive achievements. When I look around sometimes, I'm like, look at all the people in here. And it's like 3 receptionists and, you know, 11 barbers and, you know, 3 young runners and admin team, you know, like my assistant, my second assistant, my you know, my social media assistants, my web developer, and you know, all these different members is like, whoa, you know, and it's like, whoa, I've created a business that supports all of this.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would like you to see this from another perspective because I know what it feels like when you are at an award and you're like, what am I doing here? But the reason why you were nominated, and I think you probably would know, is because it's not just because of what you do, but because of how you are also impacting other people. It was a business award, and you're actually helping other people, small businesses grow. And I think that's the thing that matters the most, because there might be people there that have made millions, but it's all about how you're contributing to others, how you are helping other businesses. And I think that you very well deserve to be on that table. So do not undermine yourself in any way at all. And again, just like you said, you're also happy that you're able to help other people because if you decided not to play at your best and not to give your best, then perhaps the people that are working with you, people that have the opportunity to work with you, will not be working with you today. So, and that's a lesson for many of us to learn as well, that there are many other people whose lives are tied to us in a way. And if we do not live at our full potential, then we're not just underserving ourselves, but underserving the people that are potentially connected to us. So thank you for sharing that with us as well.
No
The next
problem.
question I'm going to ask you before we start getting questions from the audience is I always start with the high points and then we take some of the low points as well because sometimes we learn a lot, we dig a lot of gold from the low points. So tell us about some of the challenging because we all know business is not always smooth. It's like highs and lows. So tell us about perhaps a challenging time or a difficult time in your business and how you manage to navigate it.
Um, a difficult time. Okay, the 2 difficult times I'll say in my business would be, one was opening up the business. That was difficult because it's just finding money, hiccups, things going wrong, you know, builders not finishing the job but being paid in full. You know, that was like difficult. Like that was physically difficult to make it happen. You know, so that is one. The other difficulty was there was a stage about maybe a year, 2 years ago, where because of the way I've been trying to run business, I was I put myself in a position where everybody else was doing good business, but I technically the business wasn't doing good business because I like the idea of like, you know, well, in a sense, you know, I've helped you in a sense to make, you know, make good money, but you know, I'm giving you like the best of the deal, so you take home so much, and you know, and then the business is kind of like just scraping by in a sense, right? And I remember getting to a point where it's kind of like actually something needs to change because everybody else is doing well. Everybody else is, everybody else is, is doing well. And I just remember just thinking to myself, there were things I was doing which I shouldn't be doing, you know, but I was doing it because to me, I was like, oh, I'm helping people, you know. And it just, I'll give you like an example. One of the things was, having individuals who work for you and around and with you, and you're putting them in a situation where they are self-employed. Little things like there was a stage when I was just paying people's VAT bills. You know, I'm just paying their VAT bill, but I'm not supposed to be paying their VAT bill. You're self-employed, you pay your own VAT bill. But I was like, okay, cool. I'm not adding it on. Instead, I'm paying for it. Right. And it's like, why? And I remember it became a difficult part as well, because also it was also at a stage when I realized that actually I'm trying to be everybody's friend and I'm trying to be everybody's, just everything in a sense to everyone, right? And I realized I had to step back and change that and be like, actually, you can help people, but you need to also put yourself in a position where you are still the boss, and you put yourself that you have that authority, and you do what's right for the business. The business is so successful because I focus so much on everybody else doing well, and it worked that way. And it wasn't a business model, but it worked. But the business needs to also be doing well. So there were loads of conversations I had to have with some deals which were changing, and so on and so on. And that was a really difficult part because it was hard, because you're shifting everything. And also I was having to just shift my mindset and the way which I was dealing with things, and the way I was talking to people, and how I was addressing people, and just the stance of not really wanting to be the boss who, I always said this thing: I want people to respect me as the boss, but I don't want anyone to see me as the boss. So on a day-to-day basis, don't be looking at me like I'm the boss, but still respect that I am, and the respect that comes with that. Not like worship me or anything like that, but just respect that, right? And I spoke to someone, and he just said, well, you're probably the reason as to why they don't, because when you're wanting everyone to know where the line is and this and that and blah, 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 basically I'm putting myself in a position where, they don't see you as that, because you don't want to be seen as that. But then you want them to switch it on at times, because you just have to be that person, full stop, and I don't know how to make that, adapting to that as well. So yeah, that was a really difficult time in that transition,
Yeah, I think it's finding the fine balance between being everything to everyone and being the boss at what you do as well. It's just finding that fine balance. So thank you for sharing that. And I actually read the story of how you actually struggled to raise the money for your shop as well. And
Yeah,
that's a story that everyone needs to read. You need to get the book,
the struggle is
Shaping Up
real.
Culture, and how you just managed to get in time and look at what it's done. And you said in a couple of months the business was already paying for itself. And so the next question I was going to ask you, which is kind of related to that, is what then is your attitude to failure? How do you see failure? Um, is this something you run away from, or what's your attitude to failure then?
Oh, to be honest, I don't mind failing. My attitude towards failure, I don't actually mind failing. Like I mind not, what do you call it? I mind not trying. I have a big issue with
Mm,
not trying, but I don't mind failing. Like I preach this: failure is part of life. We're gonna fail. Like this kind of like mindset, I think a lot of people want, where it's kind of like everything you go into, you'll be successful in. It's just like, well, that's just not reality. That's not gonna happen. You know. But I always have this thing. My regret when I look back on my life will be if I never attempted things.
mm,
But I'm not going to regret attempting and failing, because the way I see it is there's only so much you can do. So if you try your best and it doesn't work out, then it's out of your hands. You couldn't do anything more. But if you were
yeah,
looking at it and saying, should I try it? Nah, it's not going to work out. Then other people do it, and then they start becoming successful in it. You're always going to think in your head,
I should have.
that could have been me. That could have
Yeah.
been me. And I think that's a bigger irritation than I tried and it wasn't me. Because at least you
Mm-hmm.
know. So yeah, failing is, to be honest, I don't have that much of an issue with it. Although when I go into things, I always tell this thing to people. When I go into things, I go in almost wholeheartedly believing it's going to work and it's going to be successful. But also subconsciously in the back of my mind, I acknowledge the fact that it might not. Just because I believe it's going to, it might not work out. But I don't take on that attitude in the way I approach it. So the way I approach it is like, no, this is going to work. I'm going to do everything I can to make this work. But if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen.
True, true, and yeah, just like you said, I think you have certainly failed if you haven't tried.
Yeah.
And so if you say that you're running from failure, so you're not going to do it, then you have failed already. So I think I'm taking a cue from that. There are some things that are running back of my mind, like should I do it, should I not do it? But if I don't do it, then I've 100% failed. But if I do it, then who says I might just succeed at it? So
It's
that's a
50-50.
lesson for
Yeah, and that's in my book. It's in the latest edition of the book, which is called
yeah.
the fear of failure. And it's just
Hmm.
like, if you see failing as not getting the thing that you want, so you want to play for this football team, so failing will be not playing for the football team, and success will be playing for the football team.
Yeah.
If you decide not to turn up to the audition or the trial, sorry, then you failed.
Yeah.
So even
already.
though you can say, well, if I went there, I would have worked out, and you can boast and say, yeah, I've never failed because I never did it. Well, no, ultimately at its core, you wanted to play for the
Mm,
team. So if you don't play for the team, you failed whether you went there or not. But if you
true,
go for the trial, there's a chance you might get it, but there's no chance if you don't attempt.
true. Yeah, it's just like they say that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to say something that might be funny. I think I've heard somewhere that there are some professions that you shouldn't lie to. I think they've said your doctor, your lawyer, and maybe your priest. But for some reason, barbers or barber shops are very influential in the community. Why do you think this is so?
I think culturally it's something, which goes way before we were even born.
Hmm.
It stems from there. I think there's probably no, actually, I'm about to say probably most on the black community, but it's not actually probably because I do speak to like white hairdressers and barbers and people who go to white hairdressers and white
Hmm.
barbers as well, and they do say as well, they speak to their barber or they speak to their hairdresser. When they're in that chair, they just
Yeah.
start blabbermouth and they and they just start talking, right? So I think it's something to do with something probably scientific that a scientist or someone like that can kind of break down, to do with probably the chair, the way the chair is, the big chair, the big leather chair, especially for barbering. I've always thought about this. Maybe it's the vibrations in the head that soothes people. Also with vibrations, and it, because it's so close to your ear, it kind of blocks out everybody else around you. So when you're cutting
Mm,
someone's hair, when I'm talking to you, because of like the clippers and maybe the music might be on a little bit and everybody else is in their own conversations, and then you got this vibration and the sound of it, it also can create the thing of like it's just you and them. Maybe the fact that we stand over them gives this
mhm.
shield. you know Maybe people say the importance people put on their hair subconsciously and consciously as well. It's almost like you're an important part. It's almost like you have this authority in my life in this moment, right? As
Yeah.
well as all the different elements. I think maybe that creates this environment where some people now just start spilling all their secrets, feel they can trust you, and so on and so on and so on. But yeah, these have been some of my thoughts around that.
Yeah, they're very valid thoughts. And one other one that I was going to add to it, I think, is also because when people come to the barber shop, they're not looking in their best states, but when they're leaving or during that process, they see themselves looking better, feeling better. So I
Yeah.
think the fact that you're building their self-esteem, then they feel this is someone I can trust. So I think that's one other reason why people actually open up. And yeah, when you're in barber shop, for some reason, when the barber is speaking to you, everything tends to go into your brain as they're speaking and things like that. I think you're in a position of influence or authority as such. So, can you give us any instance or any experience from that when maybe you used your influence as a barber to make some positive contribution to the community?
Well, I guess yeah. There's a number of things, to be honest. There's micro issues, which is just kind of like on a day-to-day basis. There might be
Yeah.
more big issues, not big issues, but big circumstances where as example, maybe I just put on an event, you know, and that was that's something big. Although I think on a micro level, I think these things are actually more influential and more impactful than putting
Hmm.
on an event, let's say one day, and feeding everybody. I think the things you do every day and probably make a bigger impact in life because it's continuous. So I'd
Yeah.
say, like, I had this conversation a few days ago where I was saying, because of my position of where I'm at and the way people maybe look at me and just owning a business, being, quote unquote, the boss, right? I've always said that I will lead from the front. And what I mean by that is, so I'm the most open in the shop.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just most open. Like, I'm the one who talks most about my failures. I'm the one who talks most about things that don't go right in my life. And that's a conscious thing I do. And the reason why I do that is because I know if people see that the boss, is talking about his failures, talking about myself, um, then it makes it easier for them to be a bit more free and less uptight because I'm coming in talking about, as example, I lost this money. I thought this was really going to work and lost. or I'm talking about an embarrassed moment where maybe, let's say, someone was rude to me, and they were in a situation where I couldn't do nothing about it, and it's embarrassing for me to talk about it as example, and it's like, oh yeah, man, they just were talking down to me in front of everyone, and everyone just started laughing. I'm making up a situation, and everyone just started laughing at me, and I was just like, whoa, I can't even talk back because it won't be good for me, and telling those type of stories to the staff, to the barbers, to customers, when I know they look at me in a certain way, I know puts them in a situation where I'm not building up their ego as example to do silly things in life, and just to let them know that these things just happen. So I like to use my influence kind of like in that way. It's the same thing with barbers. I remember when I see barbers who come to the shop, I remember one of the barbers being very shocked by this because he came in to work for the barbers, and I guess he saw it as a big brand. And I looked at him, and he'd done some haircuts over the first 2 weeks for it, and I said to him, yeah, you're better than me at doing scissor cuts. And he was like, kind of like, what? I was like, yeah, you're better than me at doing scissor cuts. And I guess he was surprised because I guess he saw it as, if I'm this brand and the name, why would I say that? But I always kind of like to lead with those type of things there to see where people are strong and to kind of boost them and be like, yeah, you're better than me at that. And also it means that I'm creating this environment straight away of honesty, and also I'm creating this environment of like, there's no kind of like
competition,
or like, I'm like I can't rate you, or I can't say you're better than me at something, and or I have to be like, I'm the best and everyone look at me. I'm kind of starting it off from saying, look, I'm laying myself down to say this is what you're good at, and I might even say, you know what, I'd like to take some lessons from you on that later on. So I'm creating this environment straight away of, I'm not here against you, I'm not warring against you, I'm not here to to look down on you or anything like that. It's like, I'm creating this open environment, so now that person can drop those kind of like walls, and then can come and ask me for help if they need it, or ask someone else for help if they need it, because already the boss has been the person who's laid himself down to say, actually, you know what, you're better than me at this, and I could get some help from you with this. And I think those little micro things, I think play a big part in the environment you work in, and even maybe in the way they carry themselves outside of the shop.
True. How about because you're very famous. I know you don't like people saying that, but you're very famous because you have a lot of celebrity clients. So are you just share one of them? Like how do you come about your celebrity gigs, and any one of them? Just give us one story for the audience.
Okay, who do you want to know about? You give me a name.
Anyone is fine. LeBron James.
Okay, LeBron James. Um, Way back, I randomly one day I was in a barbershop just cutting hair, and someone came in to get their haircut. Literally, random person. I cut his hair. That was it. Never spoke to him. That was it. Really. Came back about a year later. Now he's waiting for me because when he came the first time a year ago, I cut his hair. Now I'm talking to him, and he just says to me, "Oh yeah, he's a professional basketball player." I said, "Oh okay, he plays in the NBA, but he's originally from London, so he comes back every year to see his family." Cool, that's it.
Yeah.
And the last haircut I gave him was a good haircut. I didn't know he was. It was a good haircut. So I'm cutting his hair. Then about a few years later, he's come. The NBA, they're doing the Olympics in London, and he's just like, yeah, I spoke to the basketball players, and they want a haircut, and I recommend them to you because they're like, you're originally from London. They're talking to this guy Pops Mensa. They're like, you're originally from London. Any good barbers? And he's like, yeah, my barber is good in London. So yeah, come see my barber. And long and short of it, very long story short, that's how I end up cutting his hair. And that just came from me just doing my job day to day, how I'm supposed to be doing it.
Wow, wow. And it's just like what you said from the start, like you never know who you're helping, or who the person you're helping might be connected to. Just I
Yeah,
think something that you use as your, and it's in your book as well, like whatever you do, just do it with all your heart as if you're doing it for God, because you never can tell when it's going to come back from. So, and I think that that's just built up and up and up, and that's just what has opened the doors for you on many occasions. I saw a picture of you standing in front of 10 Downing Street as well, and it's just because you're diligent at what you do, and that's why many doors are open for you. So well done with what you do.
thank you.
It's really impressive. And I know that you've got a bachelor's degree in performing arts, but you do barbering full time. So, but I know that you've also got social media accounts. So, do you think that's played an influence, like your background in performing arts has played an influence in you driving your social media accounts? Do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. Where performing arts has helped me just in the way I appear on camera, my confidence on camera, the way I speak on camera, me, it's everything I learned there that makes me like I'll be reciting things which I learned from, performing arts and from performing and from drama and acting, where I'll be like, okay, can everybody hear me? Am I speaking clearly? Am I speaking directly to the camera? Am I keeping eye contact? You know, um, Seeing everything as a stage. So I remember like I done this campaign thing with Instagram before, right? And they
Yeah.
used me to teach people how to do a good Insta story. And I remember the things I was talking about, which is what I learned from performing, was little things like, so everyone's watched it, like someone's on social media on a video which they didn't know what was going on, right? So everyone's shouting, everyone's screaming, everyone's celebrating, oh, this and that, and you're watching it, thinking of what's going on, and people are laughing, and people are, and you just don't know what's going on, right? And I've always said those people are performing for themselves. But when you record a video, you're performing for other people. So even
Yeah.
though something funny has just happened in this room, right? Don't record and put it out there unless you're going to make sure those people know what is going on. So these are the things you learn from performing, but the average person doesn't. So it's kind of like, instead you'll see me in a situation where the room is going crazy, but when I'm filming, I'm narrating what's going on. So I'll be like, oh, guys, you never know what happened. Like, this person fell over and he spilled the drink and the drink fell on the person's head, and look at him right now. It's because I understand that I'm performing for you now. But the importance is, if I'm going to film it, you need to know what's going on, not just a room of everybody just laughing, because you're watching it as a viewer, like, what is this? What's going on? You don't know, So all those little things there are the things which I learned from performing. Is the idea of like not realizing when you're filming, you're performing for people and you're serving people. So you've got to make sure that those people you're serving understand what's going on. They have a clear vision of what's going on. So you have things like a lens cleaner to make sure you just wipe your lens because it's clear. Because you're just like, how am I coming across to people, and are people understanding what's going on?
So it's interesting. I mean, the reason I asked that question is because we all go through different life experiences, and sometimes it might look like I don't know why I'm doing this at the moment. I don't know why, but it could come in useful at some point in your life. And yes, your part of your fame is because you're a very good barber. You've got a huge celebrity client list, but also because of what you do on social media. You have I mean, if you added them together, probably over 200,000 people following you on Instagram and YouTube and on the likes combined. But at that time when you're doing performing arts, you might not have known that that would come in useful. But it's just for people to know that all of life experiences are happening to us for a reason, and it will make sense later on down the line. And you should not undermine what you're doing, where you are at
Yeah.
whatever point in your life. Because we're running out of time very quickly, I'm just going to ask maybe one or two more questions and see if there's some questions from the audience. And the next question I want to ask you is, how do you balance work as with your social media, your barbering job, your family? And I just found out that your wife is also creative in the sense that she's a well-renowned artist as well.
Yeah.
So how do you just combine all of that together? I mean, and doing podcasts as well when you should be eating with your family. How do you just combine everything? How do you balance everything?
You don't sleep as much.
I can imagine.
you know, you don't sleep as much. I always say this thing, you got to make sure your priorities are your priorities. And when you focus on your priorities, then, you're always going to have to sacrifice something. And, don't be confused or deceived to think you can do everything you want and have no sacrifices in the slightest. Something gets sacrificed. That could be your work. That could be your family. That can be your sleep. That could be your friends. Something has to get sacrificed. Right. So in me, I think a lot of times it's been rest, sleep, rest, to make sure that my priorities are my priorities, to make sure that I'm around with my children. So make sure that, okay, just then I was cooking for them and I've been with them all day. Then I come to do the podcast and I showered on my children right before we came on the podcast as well. So it's kind of like, cool, I've done that now. Then as soon as we get off, it'll be like, okay, cool, putting them to bed. And it's kind of like, today, which is a Sunday, it would be like, oh, it would be a good day to rest. But it's like, have I rested today? No, I woke up. What did I do? I went for a run. Straight up, came back from a run, showered. Before I went on a run, prepared their food. I prepared their food, got them dressed so they were ready to leave. Got all their swimming stuff prepared the night before. Came back from the run, showered myself. They were ready because I got them ready before I left. Took them swimming. Straight from swimming, came home, took the helmets off, took the swim stuff out my bag. Quickly put their snacks in the bag. Went straight to church. Came back from church. Was outside roller skating with them. Came in, prepared food, come on the podcast. So basically, what it is kind of like, when did I stop? So what's the sacrifice? The sacrifice is rest, and rest is needed. So I'm not telling people not to have rest, but I'm saying something gets sacrificed. But where for me, it's kind of like, what's my priorities and what's important? It's like, well, doing those things are important to me. So in order to do those things there and still feed my business and so on, what's the sacrifice? It means the rest is the sacrifice.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, when you were saying all the things you've done today, it just felt like you were, I don't know if you know Flash, because you're just like, I went on my run, I did this, I did that. I'm just like, wow. And then went to church, and yeah, well, I can imagine, yeah, because I think I've seen a story of you on Instagram as well, that you were cycling and you're like, you're going to work, and yeah, I mean, you have to make time for what's important to you. And you mentioned things like your family, you mentioned faith, you mentioned rest, and it's just like you said, you have to actually sacrifice things. You can't do everything, but you can be very good at some of the things you do. And if you decide to be good at your work, being a family man, being a person of faith, then you can also definitely be the best at what you do. I think that we haven't shown your book just yet. So do you want to just tell us about your book, Shaping Up Culture, and where the concept came from? I've got a copy here. You don't have to worry. Yeah.
I've got a copy. So once I just realized, even this battery's about to, which is bad of me. This battery's actually about to die. I'm just gonna put this on charge. The laptop.
Yeah, go for
Sorry,
it.
very bad of me. Very bad of me. I thought it would last, and now it's on 4%.
Wow.
I was
It's a
like,
good thing you spotted it, though.
I thought it's gonna last. It's over halfway, and it's not my laptop either. It's my wife's. So I was like, oh, I just thought, what, we're back. We're charging. All right. Shaping Up Culture. What was the last question you said?
Yeah, just tell us about Shaping Up Culture. Where did the idea come from?
So Shaping Up Culture came from literally being in a barbershop and talking to people and trying to help people and giving people advice and so on. And then I was like, a lot of this stuff I'm saying, I've got a lot of things to say, which I want to, really say to more than maybe just the people in my chair. And I remember doing a bit of youth work in my church. And when I was speaking to them as well, they were saying to me, you should do a YouTube channel, because the things you say to us is really relatable, just because of the way I would deliver a message. Because my whole thing in life has always been, you're not here to force anybody to do anything. Ultimately, you're here to give people information and tell them maybe why they should do something, and the pros and the cons, and the reactions from the things which they do, right? But ultimately, especially when it comes to adults, you're here to make your own decisions. So even when I was talking to them, like I remember in the youth in the church, we're just always like, you just say it and deliver it in a certain way that makes it easy to digest and understand, more than you have to do this, you have to do that, and you're going to do this, and so on and so on. It's just like, I'll just be like, I'll just be like to the young girls. I said, listen, you're at that age, right? Just be very real about it. I know you guys are talking about certain things in school, whether your parents know it or not, you're talking about these things right now in school. You're going to have pressures in school and in your social environment. So I'll be like, you guys have got to make the decision right now of, are you going to do this? Are you going to get involved in that? Is that what you want? And if you don't want that, then there are things you should avoid. Guys are going to say this to you. Guys are going to say that to you. I said, guys are just liars. I said, they're just driven by their hormones, and this is just what they want in it. So I said, I work in a male-dominated environment. I know what these young boys are talking about. So, I'm just saying to them, look, if you want to do it, then that's your decision. Then you're making the decision to do that. But just understand, don't make that decision on the basis that you think this person really just loves me, and this person just really wants this, and this person just really wants that, and this person's going to do all these things. I'm just like, well, people will say what they want to say to get what they want. Understand that. So if you do decide to go do something, don't do it on the basis of you thought this was going to be the response. Because I'm telling you, you know, and I'm telling you maybe why you shouldn't do it. So when I'm just saying these messages, and I'm saying these type of messages as well at work, people are just listening. And I was like, you know what, I want to, you know, do this. And, you know, they said I should do a YouTube channel. Then I just came to one stage, I said, okay, let me just do a YouTube channel. So I just started talking about things which I was interested in and things which I had opinions on. And I called it Shaping Up Culture because me and my wife and this a female friend of ours, me and my wife's friend called Shafra, we were just brainstorming about names that really connected with me. And, you know, we just came up with the idea of Shaping Up Culture. Then I added as well, you know, originally it was Shaping Up Culture, one hairline at a time, because there's the whole idea of like, I'm going to be shaping up, which you do in the barbershop, one hairline at a time from the barbershop, you know. So it was kind of like a play on words of like, I'm trying to shape up culture, but I do actually shape up hair, you know. And the message I'm delivering is literally me trying to shape up culture, because I'm seeing a lot of issues in the culture and where we're coming from. So, you know, there's loads of kind of like variances in the meaning of the name, but ultimately meaning the same thing of like trying to help, you know, shape up, you know, community, a culture that I'm coming from that I think, you know, is going wrong, or shape up where I think it's going wrong. And that's what shaping up culture is about. When you read the messages, you know, we're always in an interview. We spoke about it earlier. What is that?
Yeah.
What is that me saying? I'm just trying to school people about the idea of the interview doesn't start when you're in front of the person. You know, people watching you, interviewing you. You know, goals, teaching people about the idea of goals. That's the first chapter. No, sorry, that's the second chapter. You know, teaching people about the idea of goals and just, you know, where we're coming from. Everybody just wants to be rich. This is what the chapter's about. Everyone just says, you know, what do you want to do? I want to be rich. Why do you want to be rich? Because I want to do whatever I want to do. What do you want to do? I want to do whatever I want to do. Yeah, what's that thing you want to do? I had this conversation with loads of people. I started realizing people don't even know what they want to do, but they just want to have money. And I said, you know, maybe you need to stop thinking about money and start thinking about the things you want to do out of life. And then money could be a mediator to help achieve those things instead of making money your goal. You know, it's just shaping up. So they're coming from things which I'm seeing, from conversations which I'm having, some things I'm seeing which are going wrong. And that's just shaping up culture. So when you read the whole 13 chapters in Shaping Up Culture, you just realize a lot of things, especially where I'm coming from, they're just connecting. So it's not solely to the community I'm coming from, but it's to do with the community I'm coming from. So other people can read chapters and say, this is beneficial to me. And it's like, yeah, but it's coming from my experiences and things I'm seeing in my environment and where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I have read the book. And to be honest, my mother-in-law is currently reading it as well, and she said it's a very good book. So I recommend it to all of you. It's very easy to read, and you can actually read it in one sitting, and
Yeah.
because everything just kind of flows, and with life stories and things like that. So I recommend you check this book out on Amazon or any other retailer near you. I've tried to look through the comments from the audience. There's not many questions. I think there's only one question, and that was like, when did you realize that you had your passion? You mentioned that your passion was to help others. At what point did you realize that that was your passion? That was a question from Mike. And I think after that, we'll call it a day.
Okay.
So when did you realize was your passion to help others?
I don't think I realized it was my, maybe recently, like maybe in recent years, I realized. I think sometimes your passion lives out before you, at times, your passion might live out, might run before you even realize, you know, it. But then when you look at your life, you're like, oh, actually, everything, like if you're passionate about football, but you haven't really come to that realization, but you realize every day you're watching football games, every day you're watching commentary, every day, you know, you got football stickers, you got football cards, you got football, you feel like suddenly you're a pundit in football. And then you realize when you look back on your life, actually, I've always been passionate about football. Now I think about it, but you never did it saying, I'm passionate about football, I'm going to do all these things there. You did all these things because you were passionate about it. And I think when it came to me, maybe with helping people, when I look back, it's kind of like you're looking at all the things I've done or I'm doing, and the way I view things. It's like, oh, okay, I can see it now more than, oh, I just want to help people. 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 Yeah, that's my passion. Let me find things. You realize, no, you're doing that stuff there, and then you've just realized I'm giving it a title of like, okay, you know, imagine you just like cutting hair, but you don't know barbering the career. You don't know anything about it, so you've just been cutting people's hair, and then someone says, oh, you're a barber, you know, and like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I just enjoy doing this thing of, you know, making people look better. And they're like, yeah, where we come from, that's what we call a barber. And they put a title onto it. But you were just doing it anyway because you just enjoyed it. You know, you didn't think anything of it. And I think that's what happened with me when you could say helping people. It wasn't something that was I realized so long ago clearly, but you realize more recently when you look at what you're doing, and then I'm giving it that kind of like title, you could say.
Well, how time flies. It's 1 hour already, so I have to let you go, and I have to let the members of the audience go. So today we've been hanging out with Maciver, and it's been a really great session. He's shown us that you should just give the best at what you do, because if you doing it as if you're doing it for God and not just for people, it will open doors of opportunity that you never knew existed. And another takeaway for me today is that you should learn that you're always in an interview. Always give the best at what you're doing. People are watching you, whether you know it or not. And even if people are not watching you, you should always be the best version of yourself, because that's the only thing that you can do. And as you give the best at what you do, sometimes you might fail, sometimes you might succeed, but every time you fail, just know there's another opportunity at learning. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for your time. Spending 1 hour of your valuable time with us. We really appreciate it, and we wish you all the best with your career. 20 years is not a joke. 20 years in one industry is not a joke, and we hope to keep seeing you at the top in your field, and making us proud wherever you go. So
Thank
for
you.
all the members of the audience, as I always say, till we meet again, make sure you keep living with passion and purpose. We'll see you later. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you for having me.